Officer Derek Mason pulled his patrol car behind the black Mercedes. His hand moved to his radio as he watched the woman in the driver's seat. She was black, wearing a business suit, and according to him, driving too nice of a car for this neighborhood. He stepped out, hand near his belt, and walked toward her window with that familiar look, the one that said he'd already made up his mind about who she was. License and registration, now. The woman stayed calm, reaching slowly for her purse. Officer, is there a problem? I wasn't speeding. Mason's jaw tightened. I'll decide if there's a problem out of the car. Hands where I can see them. What Officer Mason didn't know was that the woman he was about to humiliate wasn't just any driver. She was Agent Diana Mitchell, FBI Internal Affairs, and she'd been investigating him for 3 months. In the next 20 minutes, this traffic stop would end Officer Mason's career and expose a department-wide scandal that would shock the entire city. Before we show you how this racist cop's world came crashing down, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss stories where justice gets served. Now let's see what happened next. The cop, Officer Derek Mason, Derek Mason, had been with the Riverside Police Department for 8 years. On paper, he looked like a solid officer, dozens of arrests, commendations for proactive policing, and support from his union. But the numbers told a different story. In 8 years, Mason had made 147 traffic stops. 112 of them were black drivers. 89 of those stops resulted in searches. Only 3 ever produced evidence of actual crimes. His fellow officers knew his reputation. Some avoided partnering with him. Others looked the way when he'd pull over another black driver in a nice car, claiming they matched a description or were driving suspiciously. The complaints had been piling up for years. But each time the department's internal review cleared him, each time the union defended him, each time nothing changed, until 3 months ago. The FBI agent, Diana Mitchell grew up in Riverside. She remembered being 16, driving her mother's car home from church, when an officer pulled her over for failing to signal. He'd searched the entire car, made her wait on the curb for 45 minutes, then let her go with a warning. No ticket, no apology, just humiliation. That day shaped her future. She joined the FBI, worked her way through the ranks, and specialized in civil rights investigations. For the past 5 years, she'd been part of Internal Affairs, the unit that investigates police misconduct. When a pattern of complaints about Riverside PD crossed her desk, one name appeared over and over: Officer Derek Mason. 23 formal complaints in 8 years, 15 alleging racial profiling, 8 alleging excessive force during traffic stops, 0 disciplinary actions. Diana had spent 3 months building a case. She'd interviewed victims, reviewed dash cam footage, and analyzed Mason's arrest patterns. She had everything she needed, except one thing: direct evidence of him in action. So she made a decision. She would become the bait. That Tuesday morning, Diana dressed in her best business suit, got into her Mercedes, and drove through Mason's usual patrol area. She knew his patterns. He worked the 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. shift, usually cruising the border between the wealthy North District and the predominantly black East Side. She drove carefully, obeying every traffic law. She wanted him to have no legitimate reason to pull her over. But she knew that wouldn't matter. This wasn't just about one bad cop. Diana's investigation had uncovered something bigger. Mason wasn't acting alone. His arrest reports were being rubber-stamped by his sergeant. His complaints were being buried by the department's review board, and his pattern of behavior was being protected by a system designed to shield officers from accountability. If she could get Mason on record, showing his true nature, his bias, his willingness to abuse his power, she could crack the case wide open. But she had to be careful. One wrong move and he could claim she'd entrapped him. One mistake and the entire investigation could fall apart. As she watched his patrol car pull up behind her in her rearview mirror, her heart raced, but her hands stayed steady on the wheel. This was it. Everything she'd worked for came down to the next 20 minutes. The traffic stop begins. Diana pulled over to the curb, put the car in park, and placed both hands on the steering wheel where Mason could see them. She'd done everything right. Mason approached the window, his body language already aggressive. He didn't ask how she was doing. He didn't explain why he'd pulled her over. "License and registration," he demanded, shining his flashlight directly in her face even though it was the middle of the afternoon. "Officer, can you tell me why you pulled me over? I wasn't speeding and I used my turn signals." Mason's face hardened. "I don't need to explain myself to you. License and registration." Now, Diana reached slowly for her purse in the passenger seat. She moved deliberately, keeping her movements visible. "I'm just reaching for my wallet, officer. Keep your hands where I can see them." Mason's hand moved to his gun. Diana froze. "My hands are visible, officer. My wallet is in my purse. I need to reach for it to get my license." The first lie Mason stepped back from the window. "Step out of the car, now." "Officer, I haven't done anything wrong. Why do I need to step out?" "Because I said so. This is a high-crime area, and this vehicle matches the description of one involved in a theft." Diana knew this was a lie. It was the same lie he'd used on 12 other black drivers in the past 6 months. She'd read every report. "What description, officer? What was stolen?" Mason's jaw clenched. "Step out of the car, or I will remove you forcibly." Diana complied, moving slowly. As she stepped onto the curb, she was careful to keep her hands visible and her voice calm. "Officer, I'm complying with your requests, but I need to inform you that I'm recording this interaction. This is my right under state law." That was when Mason noticed her phone on the dashboard mount, its camera facing forward. His face went red. "The situation escalates. You're recording me? Give me that phone, now." "Officer, I have the legal right to record police interactions in public. I'm not required to surrender my property." Mason reached into the car and grabbed the phone from the mount. "This is evidence in an investigation. I'm seizing it." "What investigation, officer? You haven't told me what crime I'm suspected of committing." "Resisting arrest," Mason said, pulling out his handcuffs. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." "I haven't resisted anything. I've complied with every instruction you've given me." But Mason wasn't listening. He grabbed Diana's wrist and twisted it behind her back roughly. She winced but didn't pull away. "You're hurting me, officer. I'm not resisting. There are witnesses watching." And there were. A woman across the street had stopped to watch. A man walking his dog had his phone out. An elderly couple in their front yard stood frozen, watching the scene unfold. Mason didn't care. He cuffed Diana's wrists so tight she could feel her circulation being cut off. "Officer, these cuffs are too tight. You're cutting off my circulation. Should have thought about that before you decided to resist." With Diana in handcuffs, Mason returned to her car. He opened the driver's door and began searching, going through her glove compartment, center console, and back seat. "Officer, do you have probable cause to search my vehicle?" "I've got all the probable cause I need. You matched a description, you were driving in a high-crime area, and you resisted arrest." He pulled out her briefcase from the back seat and opened it. Inside were files, a laptop, and her FBI credentials in a leather holder. Mason pulled out a folder labeled Riverside PD Complaint Analysis, but didn't open it. He was too focused on finding drugs, weapons, or anything else he could add to his arrest report. "What's all this paperwork? You some kind of lawyer?" "I'm asking you again, officer. What crime am I being charged with?" "I already told you, resisting arrest, and now I'm adding failure to comply with a lawful order." The backup arrives. Another patrol car pulled up. Officer Linda Torres stepped out, a 15-year veteran known in the department as one of the good ones. She'd worked with Mason before and didn't like him, but she also knew better than to challenge a fellow officer in public. "Derek, what's going on?" "Routine stop. Subject matched a description and resisted arrest. I'm searching the vehicle now." Torres looked at Diana, standing on the curb in handcuffs, and then at the Mercedes. Something didn't feel right. "What description?" "Black female driving a black luxury vehicle. Possible involvement in a theft." Torres frowned. "What theft? I didn't hear anything about a theft on the radio." Mason's face flushed. "It came through earlier. Just help me search the vehicle." But Torres didn't move. She looked at Diana more carefully. The expensive suit. The calm demeanor despite being in handcuffs, the briefcase Mason had pulled from the back seat. "Derek, did you check her ID yet?" "I was getting to it." "Maybe you should do that first." The tension BUILDS. Mason slammed the car door and walked back to Diana. "Where's your license?" "In my wallet, in my purse." "Which is in the front passenger seat where you told me to leave it." Mason retrieved the purse and dumped its contents on the hood of the car. Lipstick, keys, a wallet, and a small leather credential holder tumbled out. He grabbed the wallet and pulled out her driver's license. Diana Mitchell, age 34, address in the North District. Then he noticed the credential holder. It was closed, but it had an official seal embossed on the front. Torres saw it too. "Derek, what's that?" Mason picked it up and opened it. Inside was a gold badge and an ID card with the FBI seal. "Special Agent Diana Mitchell, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Internal Affairs Division." The color drained from Mason's face. Torres stepped back, her eyes going wide. Diana, still in handcuffs, spoke quietly. Officer Mason, I'm going to need you to remove these handcuffs now. And then we're going to have a conversation about why you pulled me over, why you searched my vehicle without probable cause, and why you arrested me for a crime I didn't commit. The moment of realization, Officer Mason stood frozen, Diana's FBI credentials in his shaking hands. The gold badge seemed to burn his fingers. Officer Torres took a step back, her face pale. She's FBI? Torres whispered. Mason's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The confident, aggressive cop from 5 minutes ago had vanished. In his place stood a man who suddenly realized his entire career was over. Diana's voice remained calm, almost cold. Officer Torres, I'm going to ask you to remove these handcuffs. They're too tight and causing pain, which constitutes excessive force. Then I need you to return my phone, my property, and my vehicle keys. Torres moved immediately, pulling out her cuff key. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, You didn't know, I understand. But you're a witness now to what happened here, and I need you to be clear about what you saw. As the cuffs came off, Diana rubbed her wrists. Dark red marks circled both of them where the metal had dug into her skin. She held them up, making sure the growing crowd of witnesses could see. Officer Torres, do you have your body camera activated? Yes, ma'am. It's been on since I arrived. Good, keep it on. Mason's desperate defense. Mason finally found his voice, but it came out weak, desperate. Look, there must be some misunderstanding. You matched a description, and I was just doing my job. Diana cut him off sharply. What description, Officer Mason? I want you to state it clearly for the record right now. What specific description did I match? Mason's eyes darted around, to Torres, to the witnesses, to his patrol car. Anywhere but at Diana. A black female in a luxury vehicle. That's not a description, officer. That's a demographic and a type of car. What crime was I suspected of? You claimed I matched the description of someone involved in a theft. What was stolen? When? Where was it reported? Silence. I'm waiting, Officer Mason. I must have been mistaken about. You weren't mistaken. You lied. You pulled me over because I'm a black woman driving a Mercedes in a neighborhood you think I don't belong in. Then you escalated to a search and arrest when I asserted my rights. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern. The evidence comes out. Diana walked to her car and retrieved the briefcase Mason had pulled out earlier. She opened it and removed a thick folder. Do you know what this is, Officer Mason? He didn't answer. This is 3 months of investigation into your conduct, 23 formal complaints, 15 allegations of racial profiling, 8 allegations of excessive force. Would you like to know how many of your traffic stops in the past 2 years involved black drivers? Mason's face went from pale to red. You set me up. This is entrapment. Entrapment requires me to induce you to commit a crime you wouldn't have otherwise committed. I didn't make you pull me over. I didn't make you lie about a theft. I didn't make you search my car without probable cause. I didn't make you arrest me for resisting when your own body camera will show I complied with every instruction. You did all of that yourself. She turned to Torres. Officer Torres, I need you to call your supervisor, and I need you to preserve all dash cam and body cam footage from this stop immediately. This is now an active federal investigation into civil rights violations under Title 18, USC, Section 242. Torres pulled out her radio with shaking hands. Dispatch, this is Unit 23. I need a supervisor at my location immediately, and I need to speak with the watch commander. The witnesses speak up. The woman who had been watching from across the street approached, her phone still recording. Excuse me, are you really FBI? Diana nodded. Yes, ma'am. I got the whole thing on video. He pulled you over for no reason, made you get out of the car, handcuffed you, all of it. I can send it to you if you need it. I would appreciate that very much, thank you. The man with the dog stepped forward too. I've seen him do this before. Last month he pulled over my neighbor, young black kid, maybe 19, driving his mom's car home from college. Searched the whole car, found nothing, let him go, didn't even give a reason. More people approached. Each one had a story. Each one had seen Mason target black drivers. Some had been victims themselves, but hadn't reported it because they didn't think anyone would listen. Diana took names and contact information from each of them. Every witness was another nail in Mason's coffin. The supervisor arrived. Sergeant James Murphy pulled up in his vehicle. He was a 25-year veteran, and the moment he saw Diana's credentials, his expression turned grave. Agent Mitchell, I'm Sergeant Murphy. Can you tell me what happened here? Diana laid it out clearly and factually. At approximately 2:47 p.m., Officer Mason pulled me over without cause. When I asked why I was stopped, he refused to explain. He ordered me out of the vehicle, claimed I matched the description of someone involved in a theft that doesn't exist. When I informed him I was recording the interaction, he illegally seized my phone. He then arrested me for resisting arrest despite body camera footage that will show I complied with every instruction. He handcuffed me with excessive force, causing injury. She held up her wrists. He then conducted a warrantless search of my vehicle without probable cause. Sergeant Murphy's jaw tightened. He'd known Mason was a problem, but he'd never had ironclad proof. Now it was right in front of him. "Officer Mason, is this accurate?" Mason started to speak, but his voice cracked. "Sarge, I thought. Yes or no, did you pull over Agent Mitchell without probable cause?" Silence. "Did you arrest her for resisting arrest when she complied with your instructions?" More silence. "Did you search her vehicle without a warrant or probable cause?" Mason looked at the ground. Murphy turned to Torres. "Officer Torres, secure Officer Mason's service weapon and badge. He's suspended pending investigation effective immediately." "Sarge, you can't." "I can and I am. You're done for today, Derek. Go home, don't talk to anyone, get a lawyer." The full reveal Diana wasn't finished. She pulled out another folder from her briefcase. "Sergeant Murphy, I need to inform you that Officer Mason isn't my only concern. My investigation has revealed that his pattern of misconduct was enabled by systematic failures in your department's complaint review process." She handed him a document. "This is a summary of findings. 23 complaints against Officer Mason over 8 years. 0 sustained. But when I cross-referenced his arrest reports with demographics and case outcomes, the pattern is undeniable. Of his 147 traffic stops in the past 2 years, 112 involved black drivers. That's 76%. In a district that's 31% black. The statistical probability of that happening by chance is less than 0.01%. Murphy's face went ashen. "Furthermore, I've identified 4 other officers with similar patterns, and I've documented how complaints against these officers were systematically dismissed or downgraded by the Internal Review Board. Agent Mitchell, I wasn't aware. You should have been, Sergeant. That's the problem. The data was there, the complaints were there, the pattern was there, but nobody wanted to look." The bystanders react the crowd that had gathered erupted in murmurs. Phones were out everywhere recording. Some people were crying, others were angry. An older black man stepped forward, tears in his eyes. "My son was stopped by him. They searched him, threw him on the ground, charged him with resisting. He spent 2 nights in jail. The charges were dropped, but it's still on his record. He can't get a job now." A young woman spoke up. "He pulled me over last year, searched my whole car, made me stand on the side of the road for an hour, never told me why, just let me go." Diana listened to each of them. "I need all of you to file formal complaints and contact the FBI field office. What happened to you matters. Your stories matter. And they're going to be part of making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." Mason's final moments. Officer Mason stood beside his patrol car, his world collapsing around him. 8 years of abusing his power. 8 years of targeting people because of their skin color. 8 years of thinking he was untouchable. All of it ended in 20 minutes. Diana approached him one final time. "Officer Mason, I want you to understand something. This didn't happen because I set you up. This happened because you've been doing this to people for years. The only difference today is that you did it to someone who had the power to hold you accountable. But think about all the people who didn't have that power. All the people who you humiliated, searched, arrested, and traumatized. People who couldn't fight back because they didn't have a badge. People who filed complaints that were ignored. People whose lives you disrupted because you saw their skin color and decided they were suspicious. This isn't about me. This is about them, and it's about making sure you never get the chance to do this to anyone ever again." Mason said nothing. There was nothing he could say. Diana turned to Sergeant Murphy. "I'll be filing my full report with the FBI's Civil Rights Division and the Department of Justice. I expect full cooperation from your department in the investigation. That includes all body cam footage, dash cam footage, complaint records, and internal communications related to Officer Mason and the other officers I've flagged." "You'll have it, Agent Mitchell. You have my word." "I hope so, Sergeant, because if this investigation reveals that supervisors or administrators knew about this pattern and failed to act, they'll be facing federal charges too." The message was clear. This wasn't just about one racist cop. It was about an entire system that had protected him. The immediate fallout by that evening, the video had gone viral. The woman who recorded the traffic stop posted it to social media with the caption, Racist cop arrests black woman, didn't know she was FBI. Within 2 hours, it had 500,000 views. By midnight, over 2 million. News outlets picked it up. National civil rights organizations shared it. The hashtag number Justice for Diana started trending, even though Diana herself hadn't sought publicity. The Riverside Police Department issued a statement. "We are aware of an incident involving one of our officers and an FBI agent. The officer has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. We take all allegations of misconduct seriously and are cooperating fully with federal authorities." But the community wasn't satisfied with boilerplate PR language. They'd heard it before. They wanted real accountability. The department's reckoning within 48 hours, Diana submitted her full report to the FBI's Civil Rights Division. It was 127 pages long and included statistical analysis of traffic stops by race across the entire department, documentation of 23 complaints against Mason, and how they were dismissed, interviews with 31 victims of racial profiling, evidence of 4 other officers with similar patterns, documentation showing supervisors had access to this data, but took no action. The Department of Justice announced they were opening a pattern and practice investigation into the Riverside Police Department. This type of investigation examines whether an entire department has engaged in systemic civil rights violations. 3 days after the traffic stop, the police chief held a press conference. "We are committed to transparency and accountability. Officer Derek Mason has been terminated from the department effective immediately. We are also conducting an internal review of our complaint process and will be implementing new training and oversight measures." But the reporters weren't letting him off easy. Chief Agent Mitchell's report shows that complaints against Officer Mason were dismissed 23 times over 8 years. Why did nobody act sooner? "We are reviewing our internal processes." That's not an answer. Did supervisors know about the pattern? "I can't comment on an ongoing investigation." Agent Mitchell's report identifies 4 other officers with similar patterns. Have they been suspended? "We are reviewing all personnel." The press conference fell apart. The chief's non-answers only fueled more anger. By the end of the week, protesters gathered outside the police headquarters demanding wholesale reforms. Mason's consequences: Officer Derek Mason was fired, but that was just the beginning. The Department of Justice filed federal charges against him. Deprivation of rights under color of law, 18 U.S.C. Section 242. Illegal search and seizure, false arrest, filing false police reports. He faced up to 10 years in federal prison. His union initially defended him, claiming he was being made a scapegoat. But when the full video footage was released, showing him lying about the theft, illegally seizing Diana's phone, and handcuffing her with excessive force, even the union went quiet. Mason hired a lawyer who tried to argue that he'd made an honest mistake, but Diana's investigation destroyed that defense. She documented his pattern too thoroughly. The statistical analysis was damning. The complaints were extensive. The witnesses were credible. In the end, Mason took a plea deal: 5 years in federal prison and permanent disqualification from law enforcement. He would never wear a badge again. The 4 other officers Diana had flagged were also placed on administrative leave. 2 were eventually fired. 1 resigned before he could be terminated. The 4th took early retirement. But more importantly, the entire department was forced to change. The Department of Justice's investigation resulted in a consent decree, a legally binding agreement requiring the department to implement bias training for all officers, install dashboard and body cameras on all patrol vehicles, create an independent civilian review board for complaints, require supervisors to review all traffic stop data monthly for racial disparities, discipline officers who engage in pretextual stops or searches. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. The victims get justice. Diana didn't just take down Mason. She made sure his victims got justice too. The young man whose arrest record had prevented him from getting a job. His charges were expunged, and the city settled with him for $75,000. The woman who'd been held on the side of the road for an hour, she filed a lawsuit and won a settlement. In total, 18 people who'd been illegally stopped, searched, or arrested by Mason received settlements or had their records cleared. Diana met with each of them personally. Many told her the same thing: "We thought no one would believe us. We thought nothing would change. Thank you for proving us wrong." Diana's reflection: 2 months after the traffic stop, Diana sat in her office reviewing the final report. The investigation had consumed her life for 5 months total, 3 months of preparation, and 2 months of aftermath. She thought about that day she was 16, sitting on the curb while an officer searched her mother's car for no reason. She remembered the humiliation, the powerlessness, the anger. She'd become an FBI agent to fight that kind of injustice, and she'd succeeded. But she also knew this was just one city, one department, one officer. How many other Derek Masons were out there? How many other departments were ignoring complaints and protecting bad cops? How many more people would be profiled, searched, arrested, and traumatized before real systemic change happened? The work wasn't finished. It would never be finished. But today, at least, there was accountability. Today, at least, there was justice. The community impact, the story of Diana Mitchell and Derek Mason, became a turning point for Riverside. The department's changes were real and measurable. Within 6 months, traffic stops of black drivers decreased by 34%. Complaints of racial profiling dropped by 62%. Officer misconduct complaints were being sustained at higher rates. The Civilian Review Board had real power to discipline officers. More importantly, the community started to trust the police again. Not completely, not blindly, but enough to report crimes and cooperate with investigations. Diana received letters from people across the country. Some were from other black professionals who'd been profiled. Others were from police officers, good ones, who thanked her for holding their bad colleagues accountable. One letter stood out. It was from a young black girl, 14 years old. "Dear Agent Mitchell, I saw your story on the news. My dad got pulled over a lot, and I always wondered why. Now I understand it wasn't his fault. When I grow up, I want to be like you. I want to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. Thank you for showing me that's possible." Diana kept that letter on her desk. On the hard days, and there were many, she would read it and remember why the work mattered. The broader lesson, Diana's case became a teaching example in FBI training. It showed how one prepared agent could expose systemic problems. But it also showed something else, the power of courage. Diana had put herself at risk. If Mason had been more violent, things could have gone very differently. If the department had been more corrupt, they might have tried to bury the evidence. If the community hadn't recorded and shared the video, the story might have been controlled. But she'd taken the risk because some fights are worth fighting. Some injustices are worth exposing. And some systems need to be challenged, even when it's dangerous. The message to America, the story of Officer Mason and Agent Mitchell, isn't just about one traffic stop. It's about accountability, justice, and the ongoing struggle for civil rights in America. It's a reminder that badges don't put officers above the law. That power without accountability becomes abuse. And that ordinary people, armed with cameras, courage, and commitment to justice, can make a difference. It's also a reminder that change is possible. Departments can reform. Bad officers can be removed. Systems can improve. But only when people refuse to accept injustice as normal. The final word: 6 months after the traffic stop, Diana received a promotion. She was now supervising a team of agents investigating civil rights violations across 3 states. Her first act in the new role? She created a database tracking complaints of racial profiling across all departments in her region. Any pattern that emerged would trigger an investigation. She thought about Mason, now serving his prison sentence. She didn't hate him. She felt something closer to pity. He'd thrown away his career, his freedom, and his reputation because he couldn't see past his own prejudices. But more than that, she thought about all the people he'd hurt, the families disrupted, the trust broken, the trauma inflicted. This was why the work mattered. This was why she kept going. Because every person deserves to drive home without fear of being stopped for their skin color. Every person deserves to be treated with dignity by those who swear to protect and serve. And every person deserves justice when those protections fail. Officer Derek Mason learned that lesson the hard way. And because of Diana Mitchell's courage, hundreds of other officers were now learning it too. If this story of justice and accountability moved you, hit that subscribe button and like this video. We share real stories where people stand up against injustice and make a difference. Drop a comment telling us what you think should happen to officers who abuse their power. And remember, change starts when ordinary people refuse to accept that this is just how things are. See you in the next video, where we'll share another story of courage and justice.